Hey everyone, this is Keith Scott from out in Sydney, Australia. I'm one of the voices of Bullwinkle J. Moose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kenny and Andy McPhee.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny and welcome to Relentless and Unstoppable. We have another amazing guest coming on the channel today, so please hit like and subscribe. And after this episode, please stay tuned to the RNU channel for more amazing guests. Let's get this on!
Hey everybody, how you doing? Just a quick little share of why I started Relentless and Unstoppable. It was for one very simple reason, because of Doug Kenny. Nothing to do with me at all, zero. I was just coaching Doug, and he took on the coaching and mentoring, and he made all the changes. He took all the suggestions from his parents as well as my coaching, but it was all about Doug, his breakthrough and his weight loss, his willingness to accept that he is dealing with high functioning autism and other issues, but he's never quit, he's never given up. So we did one interview with him to share his story, and then we decided to start interviewing other people, and Doug has now taken over the whole channel, and he does all the interviews, he runs everything. He's just an amazing young man. So RNU was born from simply what an amazing young man Doug is, and his story needed to be shared.
Yeah, okay. And you know what Dunham brought to it, he learned as a radio voice. So that's a different kind of technique and talent. And so everything is in the voice. Everything. Where other actors, it's in the physicality of everything. Dunham, and it so fitted the character because Shadow is very reserved. He's internal, and I'm playing this by the book. Chance, on the other hand, is a crazy guy. He's wild and loose and doesn't want to be with anybody. And the trick with the movie was to show Chance vulnerable throughout, that it was a sense of false bravado. Caroline Thompson wrote a wonderful script, pretty easy. When I read that first script, it was like, it'd be pretty hard to screw up the last scene. And if I can just get the last scene, the movie will probably work. And then, the script was great. Like I said, other writers were brought in specifically to write jokes for the animals, and pretty soon the movie was wall-to-wall animal dialogue. It worked so well, and that's kind of how the voices came about and the final script came about. Disney was generous enough; they saw something in the movie and were willing to give it additional resources to become probably what it has become, and it's got legs. It keeps going.
That's amazing. So what was the reception like when the movie came in theaters?
As I recall, it was great. I will tell you my own personal experience is the first time we screened it for an audience. It was up in Pasadena, and it was a recruited audience, Disney movie. I don't think the name of the movie was it may have even been called Incredible Journey at that time, because the name changed late in the game, only when the advertising came out. It was Homeward Bound added to it. But I remember, it feels good when you can make somebody, an audience in this case, feel something. That you're doing something right, and it's hard to do. And so when you get laughter, that's something. But what I wasn't prepared for is when the cat went over the waterfall and it gets real quiet, and now you start hearing all these little kids crying and sniffling and saying, whatever they're saying, and the parents are trying to comfort them. It's like, she'll be okay. And you're you're sitting there. You say, what have I done? Oh my God! And actually, that didn't go unnoticed by the studio. They made me cut the trip over the waterfall back a little bit because it was pretty intense. Still pretty intense, but I preferred it the other way. If you're gonna do it all the way.
Yeah, what was the kids' reaction to the shadow scene then? The muddy pit shadow scene?
Everybody, it's quiet. Of course, when he goes in, it's a huge collective gasp because it's surprising, and it's crashing boards and they come over and chat, and this very strong character who has been leading this entire thing by his presence, and then by I'm going home and there's nothing going to stop me. And seemingly there wasn't until boom, he fell in that pit. So there was the collective gasp, but then I think, as I recall, there's the O's and, oh, Porsche, oh no, but it's not definitive. Chance gets down in there. Now you're rooting for Chance. Yeah. Maybe not out loud, but quietly to yourself, you're saying, oh, good, there's a chance. Get him up. Yeah, get him.
I see what you did there with there's a chance.
Yeah. And, Shadow does his thing, and that was a marvelous performance of Dunham at that point, and or that particular dialogue. And then you draw it out. The dog comes over the hill, the cat comes over the hill, and then it takes forever, and will Shadow come? And Peter says he's too old. And so when he turns to go back into the house, and you time that, you stretch that about as far as you think you can stretch it. And then when Shadow comes over the hill, it's everybody goes blurry and
How did you film the last scene where the dogs return to their owners?
Well, again, that was in Portland. It was summertime, so it's probably, I'm going to guess, July or August, something like that, probably late July. It was warm. The story called for it to be Thanksgiving. So we brought in a bunch of painted paper leaves, and some real leaves that were all painted in fall colors, and spread those around the ground, and then used a very special paint that wouldn't harm the live trees, and only painted the side of the trees that the camera would see. Put the actors in sweaters and made it look as much like put a giant silk over the backyard to flatten out the sun, make it look like it was an overcast day, not any harsh shadows. And then it was, what was anybody's guess how they would come over that hill, because you had to be very careful when we were shooting. Nobody knew this until you learned. And so if one day the cast and crew was hanging out and maybe had lunch in this part of the forest, or in this case, the backyard, you don't think anything of moving the next day. They're over there. Now the animals have to work here, but those animals come through and, oh, what's that? Turkey. Their nose, oh, there's food down here. It's like, what is going on? And then with Shadow, I had a conversation with Joe Camp, the trainer, and I said, Joe, how are we going to get him to limp? And he came up with the idea of putting this bean, kind of like an acorn, in the bottom of Shadow's paw between the pads.
Mhm.
And so he did that coming over that hill. And then it was, it was a lot of luck, really, because there's no way you're going to get those animals to do exactly what you want them to do. So with this movie, Chance was very much a minor character. But as we were shooting, I remember calling the studio one day and saying, we've got lightning in a bottle here. This young dog, just the personality of the dog is really something. And he's kind of taken over. And I think they were a little shocked to hear that. No, it's Shadow. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, I'm going to shoot a lot of stuff with this young dog because he's so unpredictable that, if we use it, we use it. If we don't, we don't. But it would be a crime to not take advantage of what he's offering us. And Chance, his real name was Rattler. He went cross-eyed. He was growing so fast. That's why you see through the course of the movie, depends on when we shot it, just in the few months of being on camera, he grew a lot. And, at times he's smaller than Shadow. At other times he's larger than Shadow. And one night, he grew really fast overnight. Set up in the morning, it's the scene on the porch at the farm where Shadow says, something's wrong. They should have been back by now. I'm going home. And we've got Chance. And so I set up a shot, and usually I'd sit on whatever side of the camera I wanted the animal to look at. And we'd have people with noisemakers, and I would just kind of give cues and it would cause the animals to look around. And this particular morning, I sat down and I said, okay, Joe, I want Chance to look at me right here, shooting a close-up. And he says, okay, you want him to look over there? You better go to the other side of the camera. I said, what are you talking about? I want him to look at me on this side of the camera, left or right. He says, well, if you want him to look left or right, you better go on the other side, because his skull expanded overnight and he went cross-eyed. And so that you get these goofy expressions. He's always doing this. He's simply trying to focus. He would run into trees. He would stumble and fall. He just couldn't see anything correctly. Anyway, I moved the other side. Sure enough, he's looking to the other side, trying to focus on me over here, but he's looking over here.
I've noticed that in animals as well. Sometimes I find myself wondering what horses think when they first meet a cowboy. How cowboys are like, yeah, know? I can imagine that some horses probably look up to the owner and they're like, and who are you?
Exactly.
What are you doing?
One thing that, was a surprise to all of us, the animals, the dogs, I should say, they got used to our commands. So we, at one point, the camera crew had to go on hand signals, because if the AD went out there and said rolling, those dogs start shaking, because rolling means pretty soon I get a treat. All I got to do is go somewhere and I'm going to get that treat. They start jumping around and getting all excited. It was one of these, okay, that's rolling, and sound, got it. And then they got wind of that as well. They're pretty smart. They work for food or reward. The cat, pretty much only for food. But the two dogs, they would work for reward, a pat on the head, an attaboy, and especially food.